Jonah Williams. And the thing I liked about Jonah Williams is he improved his ability to maintain blocks. He looked like a top 5 pick until his game against Clelin Ferrell. But he's such a natural. He did not allow a single sack, only allowed 3 QB hurries. The run blocking, zone blocking there. He checks out most of the boxes. He played multiple positions. He's durable. He was a team captain in high school. He struggles with strength rushers rather than speed rushers. He also places his arm too low on blocks. He's not as strong as you'd like him to be. He struggles with double teams, and he only had 1 consistent season. And there's a few teams, Tampa Bay, the Giants, Jacksonville, Buffalo, and Denver, and I really think Tampa Bay is the only team that would even consider Williams in the top 5. Plus, he has short arms for an offensive tackle. I don't think any offensive tackle in this class has the ceiling that the guys in last year's draft had. Colton Miller was raw, but he had a higher ceiling than Williams. Connor Williams had a higher ceiling than Jonah Williams. Orlando Brown had a higher ceiling. The Western Michigan tackle I liked had a higher ceiling. This tackle class is deep, but it's not top heavy. And I feel like Jonah Williams is talented. He's the best tackle in the draft, but there's a limited ceiling with him. But he's good enough to be a Pro Bowler, not good enough to be a blue chip prospect. How do you feel about Jonah Williams, Oren?
You gotta take it like this. Jonah Williams, don't get me wrong. If he's in that top 10, the category that you talked about, physical blocker, quality skills, gets the pass, gets the rush, running. He's going to do well. He's technically advanced. He knows that he is the best offensive lineman in this class. So you expect him to be in the league for the next 10 years. He's a really good tackle. He did well for Bama. And that's where it is right now. So I would lock him up, and I'll explain that when we get to my picks where he's landing at. But that's how I take on Jonah Williams.
Yeah, I think he's a 10-year player, but not a 15-year player. That's a great assessment on your end, Oren, and we'll get to the number 2 offensive tackle in these rankings. Dalton Risner out of Kansas State. Now, this is a guy who's 6'4", 308. He's got bigger arms than Jonah Williams. He can play pretty much every position on the offensive line except left tackle. He did well versus Sweat in both the Senior Bowl as well as the regular game on tape. His pass blocking is natural. His run blocking and zone blocking is superb as well. He maintains blocks longer on tape than Jonah Williams, despite the fact that he has no experience at left tackle. He doesn't have durability issues. He has never been injured at Kansas State. High football IQ. He was a 3-time captain at Kansas State. He can maintain blocks for 5 to 7 seconds. He shows the knee bend. He gets the second level. And Risner is one of the most complete right tackles I've seen on tape in years. But he's not a left tackle, and that's the only reason he's behind Jonah Williams. In fact, if he does better than Jonah Williams at the Combine, Dalton Risner might actually jump Jonah Williams. I think it's a lot closer between Dalton Risner and Jonah Williams than the experts are making it out to be. And I think he could go in the top 10 too. If Jonah Williams goes 5 to Tampa Bay, I would not be surprised if a team like Jacksonville, Buffalo, or even Denver took Risner in that top 10. I have him going – we both have Risner and Williams going to the same team, and I'll let Oren break that down later in the show. But I think Risner is actually a safer tackle. I think Williams has slightly more upside, but both guys could be in the league for 10 years, and I think Risner's actually the safer pick just based on the tape I've seen and based on how he's played and carried himself as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, Dalton Risner has been a better offensive lineman in college football for a long time. You know, he's not playing in the SEC. He's not playing in a top-flight team. But he's physically aggressive, right to tackle. And he will be in the run game. He brings power, technique, while also being able to, create space. And he knows how to shed blocks. He knows how to get through the rushers with difficulty blocks. I mean, actually, I think in September he did go up against Montez Sweat. We'll talk about Montez Sweat when I get to my draft as well. But that's one of the big things. He's personally smart. He will be in the league for quite some time as well.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I moved him up into the first round, because I saw that Risner game tape against Sweat in September. He did well in that game on YouTube, and then he did well against him in the Senior Bowl. So he had 2 strong games against him. That's why I'm higher on him than most people in the draft community. But I think he's a top 13 talent, and I don't see him falling past Miami. All right, but that's the I got him going earlier than that, but I think that's the furthest he'd slide at this point. And the next guy on my rankings is Andre Dillard out of Washington State, the guy that the media is hyping up as OT1. He actually does have some strong qualities on tape. 6'4", 310. He only gave up 1 sack once Luke Falk moved on. He really bailed out Gardner Minshew this season. And Montez Sweat was the only player to get the best of Dillard at the Senior Bowl practices. I mean, that says a lot because Andre Dillard did well against Jalen Ferguson in the team practices. However, in the game, Andre Dillard did struggle against Texas pass rusher Charles Omenihu and Iowa pass rusher Anthony Nelson. They both got by him in the Senior Bowl game to sack the QB. So I feel like the media, while Jeremiah, I agree with him about Dillard being a first-round pick, I disagree with him about being the #1 offensive tackle in the draft. I mean, he's got a better arm length than Jonah Williams. Great wingspan. But he's rawer than Jonah Williams. He's also rawer than Dalton Risner. And I took that into consideration when making my evaluation on Andre Dillard for that reason. And I think he struggles against pass rushers who know how to use rip and swim moves. He struggles with double teams. He did well enough to warrant a first-round grade. However, he did not do well enough against Sweat, Omenihu, or Nelson to warrant a top 15 grade, in my opinion. So I think Houston logistically is the best fit for him. But I could see the Panthers taking him at 16 if Matt Khalil goes. I could see the Browns taking him at 17 if they wanted to get rid of Greg Robinson, which honestly I'm not opposed to. But the Browns want to re-sign Robinson, as my colleague Joseph Potter said, then they won't take him at 17. Minnesota could be a fit too. Seattle could be a fit if they wanted to move Juan Brown to right tackle, and the Texans. And as far as threats go, I don't see any threats with Dillard. I think you could argue he's a safer prospect than Williams or Risner, but you could also argue he's rawer too, and you could argue that he's not going to be as high of a prospect in terms of potential as Jonah Williams. Now, he does have some great qualities. He is a 3-year starter at left tackle, but he's a pure left tackle, and I think a team like Houston at 23 is probably his best fit, and we'll talk more about these tackles later, but what are your thoughts on Andre Dillard, Oren?
Andre Dillard is a physical left tackle, excellent mobility, lateral movement skills. He's going to be a great value to any NFL team. I know you mentioned like 10 of them, which we may land on, but I think every team could get a offensive tackle in the first round, and any fan should be happy if they get a offensive tackle because usually offensive tackles that go in the first round are there for your team for about 10 to 15 years, like we've been talking about. I think that a good game in which Andre Dillard played was against, I believe, Wayne Brown out of Virginia Tech. Comparison, I should say. But he comes with more polish than Wayne Brown out of Virginia Tech came 2008. So, but I think you're going to see a big, tremendous upside for Andre Dillard. He did also was Andre in comparison. Montez Sweat was the only player that got past Dillard in 2019 in the Senior Bowl practice. While Charles Omenihu and Anthony Nelson both got to Dillard to sack him in 2019 Senior Bowl game. Is that correct? Something like that?
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. So it's just the opportunities are there. Let's move to the next one that you have on your list.
Yeah, I sort of reached for this guy, and my friend Jonathan Laval, who's a huge Texans fan, he disagreed with my ranking for Max Sharping at number 4, but this guy is 6'6", 320, and he got the best of Khalil Hodge in the MAC championship game, who I had a first-round grade on, and he did well versus most of his opponents. He did well versus Brian Burns out of Florida State. He did well versus Zach Allen. He did well versus Harold Landry. He struggled against Anthony Nelson of Iowa, and he did allow a few sacks in the Senior Bowl game, but when you consider that Ball State had a pass rusher who led the NCAA in sacks last year, Central Michigan had Joe Osman, and he practiced against Sutton Smith. When you consider all the good edges Max Sharping played against, the fact that he only allowed 1 sack in the past 3 seasons, this year to Iowa's Anthony Nelson is amazing, and his run blocking and zone blocking is superb. I think he's strong enough to maintain blocks. Durability is not really an issue. He can play either offensive tackle role. He gets the second level. And my only weakness is that he maintains blocks for 3 to 5 seconds instead of 5 to 7 seconds. He's a lingering blocker rather than a constant blocker. He also needs to improve his cut blocking, pull blocking, and reach blocking. He has an inconsistent leg drive. That being said, I do really love Max Sharping. He may fall to rounds 2, 3, or 4, but I think you're getting first-round value. And former Northern Illinois player Jimmy Ward at a third-round grade a few years ago, he went to the Niners in the first round. So you never know. Someone might reach for Sharping. If I'm that high on his tape and another NFL team feels that strongly about him, a team could reach for him. I think he's someone who could be a Pro Bowler down the road, and I really like his tape. So I went out on the limb here, and Greg Little's, well, he's probably ahead on your rankings. I went on a limb and went with Sharping, and I know it's a controversial take, but I really like this guy.
Well, in my ranking, we're not doing my ranking. Sharpling's not even in my top 10, but I'll give you Sharpling right now. Like I did the SWOT report here. One of the things that I think, he is very versatile. He knows how to get blocks. He's very good at that, both in the running and passing condition. He's very good. And yeah, I think going in, he is a good, decent. At the end of the second round, early third round, he could go off the board. And like you said, he did well against Brian Burns, Khalil Hodge, and those are those number one first round picks? No. So that's the thing is, but does he have the opportunity? Yes. So I think he did. You said so I think we're going to see a lot of stuff. He only allowed 1 sack. That's pretty good. He's coming from a little bit smaller school than we're used to seeing, but we'll see what happens. He is a big man, as you said before, 6'6", 320 pounds. I mean, that's no small joke, no matter where it's coming from. And so far, I think he's the largest man that we spoke about in this draft for the offensive tackles.
Yep, and number 5 is a guy by the name of Greg Little. And he's bigger than Max Sharping. He's 6'6", 325. He's won the left tackle job in his second full season. He struggled versus Alabama once again, but he did well versus everyone else who didn't have a blue-chip pass rusher. And his run blocking and zone blocking is superb. He has the footwork to be an excellent run blocker, and he played at right tackle before moving to left tackle at Ole Miss. He's durable. He gets the second level. And Todd McShay had him as the number 1 offensive tackle in the draft. Arguably the best offensive tackle when it comes to cut blocks, pull blocks, and reach blocks. While those are weaknesses for Max Sharping, those are massive strengths for Greg Little. And he also has the biggest wingspan of any offensive tackle in the draft from what I've heard. So those are a few reasons why some of the people in the media love Greg Little. I'm not as high on him, but everyone else in the media has a first-round grade on him. He played in the SEC, so he might get pushed up. He might go ahead earlier than the late first round just for that reason. Even though he's 5 on my rankings, this is a guy who could go in the top 16 of the draft. I mean, a team could reach for him out of desperation. You look at Minnesota, Seattle, Houston, Philadelphia, and the Chargers. If he could correct his pass blocking, I think you could make a definitive argument that he's the number 1 offensive tackle in the draft. And he played at Allen High School with another offensive tackle that we'll get to later.
Yeah. Well, let me go into my take on Greg Little a little bit. As we just went over, he has tremendous size, but he is very defined as an excellent footwork. He knows how to carry his weight, and get to the second level from the ground. He's more physical and very good at engaging his defenders. And he's very excited to watch as an offensive tackle. So that's what we're going to see throughout the NFL season if somebody for Greg Little. And I know he's a big guy. I mean, you don't see, we just talked about he's the biggest guy there, and that's what we're going to see. And he may improve his ranking, during the combine as well. But it's a person to look at. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we get into your next one? That's Greg Little, and that's West Virginia, Yondi Right.
Yanni Kajuste, and this is a guy that he looks amazing on tape. He did not get a Senior Bowl invite, but he just looks amazing on tape. And the footwork's there. Everything checks out. He did track and field in high school. He's a bull coming off the line, the leg extension, the hand technique. His biggest issue is flexibility. So putting him anywhere else besides left tackle is going to backfire. And he also struggles with lateral redirections at times with assignments on blocks. But he's 6'5", 321. And he's a guy that really has the opportunity to go in round 2. I think a team like Tampa Bay at 39 could take him if they're desperate to get Winston the blind side since Donovan Smith's a free agent. I think that's where he falls to. But some other teams that could also go tackle are Carolina, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Philadelphia. It depends on who's in the market for a tackle after the first round. But he's a guy on day 2 that if a team passes on a tackle in the first round, Yanni will be there, and you might be able to turn him into a starter. And he has small arms like Jonah Williams that appear to be guard arms rather than tackle arms. Also, Kajuste is injury prone. He was placed on IR in 2015 and 2016, but he stayed healthy the past 2 seasons. And he didn't play in any of the All-Star games, whether it was the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine game, or the NFLPA Bowl. So lack of exposure could hurt him. The injury, the medical concerns from his past could hurt him. The small arms could hurt him. So he might drop to round 3 or 4 because of some of his concerns and threats, but he's a second-round talent when you watch the tape. And I think he's the 6th best tackle just based on tape alone.
Let's go. Yanni, he projects to be favorably starting right tackle in the NFL. It's a gap, power-heavy run offense. It just has some restrictions in the pass protection working into the scheme. That offers, some short seam slide protection, but ideally for his physical set. Team needing an upgrade could physically start to use as a rookie in the NFL. And that's what's going to really test him right now, what we're going to see in the next couple of months, what he can do, where he's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay, worst case scenario, a team like Tampa Bay takes him at 39. They move him to right tackle because he's not ready to start at left tackle. And Tampa Bay needs offensive tackle upgrades at both positions anyway, so that's why Tampa Bay is a perfect fit for him because they can get him and turn him into a starter regardless of where they line him up, even though I think he's a better fit at left tackle. But he could play – maybe he could play right tackle too. He projects as a right tackle size-wise, but thanks to the small arms, but he's only lined up on the left side in college, so I'm not sure how to make ends meet with that. And you could argue the next guy on my list should be ahead of Yanni, and that is Florida Gators offensive tackle Jawaan Taylor. Now, this is a guy, 6'5", 328, looked a lot better in 2018 after dropping 22 pounds to go from 350 to 328. Everything checks out, pass blocking, run blocking, zone blocking. He actually tested Kentucky pass rusher Josh Allen, and that's one reason why many pundits have a first-round grade on him. I mean, his pass blocking, run blocking, zone blocking checks out. He's very strong. He can maintain blocks for 5 to 7 seconds. His footwork is good, durable, high football IQ. His hands and powerful leg drive are amazing traits. He plays with leverage. He may possess the most violent hands of any offensive tackle in the draft. He cleaned up issues with his kick slide, long arms, versatile to play left tackle or right tackle, but he's a better fit at right tackle. The weaknesses with him, he doesn't always get his hands on a defender. He packs a punch when he gets his hands. He doesn't always get his hands on a defender due to reacting too quickly or taking the wrong angle. Clean that part of his game up. But other than that, he checks out all the boxes, sometimes places his arms too low on blocks like Jonah Williams. So there are some things he needs to clean up. But you could argue that he has first-round traits. And he's a guy that I think you could argue he's not dropping out of the top 48. I'm more confident in Jawaan Taylor going in the top 48 than I am in Yanni Kajuste, mainly due to the flexibility. And while there's no threats with Taylor, he doesn't have the ceiling of a Pro Bowl tackle, but he probably has one of the 5 best floors. He's probably one of the safest offensive tackles you can draft. And sometimes teams don't go for upside in the first round. Sometimes they go for the guy with the best floor. And Jawaan Taylor has one of the 5 best floors in terms of being a safe pick that you can draft and get a reliable starter.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 3-year starter for the Gators. Taylor proved every season he's a very dominant. Taylor knows how to bend mass, ability, power, like you were saying. He's a right tackle. He does have some technical improvements to be made, probably with his hands more or less. maybe some and those are all fixable issues that Taylor will become an impact starter for an NFL offensive line. But he's going to be fun to watch as well.
Yep, absolutely.
I think his best trait is actually with his pass blocking.
I agree. I mean, Jawan Taylor does have some incredible traits on tape. And that brings us to Wisconsin's David Edwards, 6'7", 315. He missed the final 3 games of the season due to injury. He's an effective pass blocker. His run blocking, zone blocking is good as well. He needs to get stronger, though. I watched some of his tape, and he was barely holding blocks. He got pushed around way too much. I think he's a pure right tackle. And if his arm length does not do well at the combine, like if we find out he has guard arms, he's probably going to have to kick inside to guard despite being 6'7", because if we find out he has small arms at the combine or he has a bad wingspan, there's a chance he might have to move inside to guard. I don't know if he will, but I think he's a pure tackle. I think moving a 6'7" player inside to guard would be a horrible idea, but he did not look strong on tape, so he really does need to hit the weight room. But I think he's a second-round talent. I think he'll get pushed up because he did a great job run blocking for the current Wisconsin running back, Jonathan Taylor, he's a draft prospect in 2020. But the point is, David Edwards did a good job blocking for him as a run blocker. So, I mean, David Edwards probably will get picked in the second round, if I had to say.
Yeah, I mean, David Edwards, his best trait is really functional, is basically his athleticism. He did great against Nebraska, and then when he comes to a better team like Ohio State, he gets lost. David Edwards is a promising right tackle for the NFL. His skill set as a run blocker for athleticism provide him the foundation to start in the NFL, like you were saying. Actually, he entered as a tight end. He just got to be huge, man. As we said, you talked about, he's 319, 6'7". That's a huge man right there. And still offensively needs to improve in the passing game, and that's what we need to watch as we go on the combine with him and see what he does on those kind of plays, and maybe entering all the whole draft process as well. So Edwards will have experience, but a lot of growing pains coming into the draft.
Yeah, and next up we have the Oklahoma offensive tackles at 9 and 10, Bobby Evans and Cody Ford. And I put Evans at 9 because I think the fact that he played right tackle next to Orlando Brown matters. I also think the fact that he has 40 career starts compared to the 14 or very limited starts that Cody Ford has should matter. And I didn't even think Bobby Evans was in the draft. I thought he went back, but ESPN, we found a report that he actually declared on ESPN the other day, so we added him to the rankings the last minute. We were trying to shuffle everything, so I think Bobby Evans is a top 60 player in this draft. And, Bobby Evans might actually get pushed into the first round. He went to Allen High School, same high school Greg Little went to, and same high school Kyler Murray went to. And he actually beat out Greg Little for the left tackle job at that high school. So he graduated a year earlier, and he graduated the same year as Kyler Murray, too. So some fun facts about Allen High School and the fact that Bobby Evans and Greg Little played at the same, and then he played his bookend to Brown with Baker Mayfield, and then he became the blind side. So I think Bobby Evans is a safer pick than Cody Ford, but I've seen Cody Ford ahead of him in some mocks, mainly because teams are taking a look at him and saying he's a better fit at guard. He has experience at both guard spots. He's a right tackle at Oklahoma this year, but he has more experience at both guard spots, and NFL teams are projecting him as more of a guard than a tackle. But if Cody Ford is drafted as a tackle, I think he's a third-round tackle, but you could argue he's a first- or second-round guard. Or what are your thoughts on these two Oklahoma tackles at 9 and 10?
Bobby Evans, I haven't really studied Bobby Evans, but like you said, there's opportunities for some teams to get him, like the Broncos at 41, Dolphins at 48, maybe the Vikings for the Texans, and then you have him possibly Chargers. I can see him more on the Chargers, going to the Chargers number 60. If he does go in the second round, he's a great pass blocker. I think he still has a lot of work to do. As you said, he served with Orlando Brown. I go back, Cody Ford is another something different though. When you're talking about Cody Ford out of the same school, and Cody Ford, a lot of them actually have in second or third ranking, and he's you know he does his strengths are he's just very strong, but he can use some complete footwork. A lot of things you didn't mention about Cody Ford. He did heroic to break his fibula and suffered in his sophomore year. Ford Pape is, however, one of the best in this class. He shows everything in high promising, unbelievable physical finishes. He got a lot of muscles. Ford has the ability to become a full starter under his belt, and very impressive, very athletic. And no question right now, his physical and athletic gifts are superior to his polish. But Ford has some traits that he needs to work on as well, refinement, getting to the team with proper coaching, then Ford can reach a higher ceiling. And that's my take on Ford.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and
let's move to the UCLA gentleman, Andre James.
Yeah, and Cody Ford does have some strengths. I mean, we probably should have spent more time talking about him, but I wanted to get both of those Oklahoma tackles out of the way because the opportunity presented itself. But Andre James, he's kind of an unknown at this point. I have a third-round grade on him. I don't know why I said I had a second-round grade on him, but I think he's going to move down to the third round. I mean, Colton Miller, considering how disappointing Colton Miller was this year, and the fact that nobody in the media is talking about him, I wanted to put a third-round grade on him, but I guess I forgot to do that when editing this report. So, I mean, he's good, though. I like his tape versus Cincinnati at left tackle, and he played right tackle when Rosen was there. So I think Andre James could be a nice value pick on day 2. Second or third round pick, probably a third rounder now, but, you know, I think he's talented enough to be a gem at some point in this draft. How do you feel about him?
Well, Andre James, I mean, UCLA was horrible this year. Don't get me wrong. I don't have to go into that. I live in the Pac-12 region. He has strong blocking skills, both run and passing, end zone. So he knows how to play the game. He was coached well. Problem is, he does not know how to get off the blocks quickly and move. He's not as athletic as some of the players that we talked about. Yes, he has some great tape but let's see if he can make race stock in the combine.
If he does horrible at the combine, he might fall to day 3. I'm aware of that, but I do like his tape. That's what I'm saying.
Right. And he doesn't have the ceiling like Colton Miller did last year coming out of UCLA. Just remember that.
Yeah, Colton Miller had a way higher ceiling. He was a much bigger project on tape than Andre James, but he also had a way higher ceiling, and he aced every portion of the draft process. Aced the combine, aced the pro day, aced the interviews, got the invite to day 1 of the draft. So he aced every portion of the draft process. Now Andre James has to ace the process, otherwise he could risk falling to day 3 of the draft.
And, you know, just like Colton Miller, he protected Josh Rosen, Andre James, shit. I mean, you know, he has a ceiling as well. I mean, don't let things fall his head. But I would like to move to a champion amongst himself. We know who he blocked really well, and that is Mitch Hyatt out of Clemson.
Yeah, and Mitch Hyatt, 4-year starter at left tackle, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Excellent footwork, but he was only 295 pounds heading into his senior year, adds 15 pounds of muscle, has the best season since his freshman year, protecting the blind side of Trevor Lawrence. I didn't like how he gave up so many sacks on tape. Like, I watched 7 games of him heading into 2017, and he looked worse without Watson, but he looked better with Lawrence. So, I mean, he could be a backup, but he also could be a starter in the right system, the right scheme. So, I mean, I studied this guy extensively, and he is a champion. So he did well enough. I had a 5th round grade on him heading into the year, but he moved up 2 rounds.
Right. So, I mean, he did well enough to get his quarterback safe and moving to a championship versus Oklahoma. He did very well.
He won 2 championships. One with Watson, one with Lawrence.
Championship. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just saying. And I like your little comment here at the end here. You know, before that was basically before 2018. You weren't really looking at him, but he is. You know, he is. And the only thing faulting him, I think, is he gets a lot of false start penalties, and that's going to kill a team in the NFL. And we have to point that out because we do see that a lot, let alone from guards and tackles in the NFL. But if you're already coming that from college, you're bringing that with you, it's going to put your team back down, and you don't want any holding calls as well.
Yeah. And then number 14 was 13, actually. Number 13 was Aaron Monteiro out of Boston College. This is a guy who I had a 1st round grade on in the preseason, but he did not have a good season. He did not go to any of the Senior Bowls. He looked like he possessed more stamina than any offensive tackle in the draft. He took 100 snaps in one game versus Temple, but he didn't get his hands on defenders in passing situations. He got lost in open space this year. And Clellan Ferrell, Joe Jackson, Brian Burns all embarrassed Monteiro on tape in 2018. So Monteiro might fall to day 3 if scouts look at that more than anything else. But I think he has 3rd round talent. Now, how he does at the combine is going to matter because if he doesn't get a combine invite, he's going to have to rely on his pro day. And if he has a bad pro day, he'll fall to day 3. But I do like his tape. That being said, how is that going to affect his stock moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember he is a 4-year starting left tackle at Boston College. He does, like, I think when I was reading what you said earlier in your article, he was the first one. He has the potential to become one of the 1st-round draft picks, depending on how he can do, like at the combine and what have you. He has opportunities there. Like his hands and against defenders, he gets lost in open space. I mean, it's just, does he have a strength? Yes, his pass blocking, footwork, run blocking, zone blocking. I mean, he is a good blocker in all, but he has a lot to learn in Boston College, and we're going to see that progress in the NFL as well. I'd like to move to Caleb McGarry, another Pac-12 offensive tackle out of Washington, and we have a projection in the 3rd round. Caleb McGarry, when you bring Caleb McGarry into the picture, he's a tough little athlete. I should say big athlete. However, he has a heart and a ferment issue, which will sometimes something teams will look at, especially when he goes and starts interviewing with teams. But McGarry has potential in the run game, showing the ability to move defenders, pave open front lanes, pass levels, get to his hands, very good, very dominant player. I just don't know how realistic he's going to be in the NFL. What is your take on McGarry?
Yeah, Caleb McGarry. I really liked Caleb McGarry at the Senior Bowl. Great size, 6'6", 321. He really did well in the Senior Bowl practices, and I think he's a solid right tackle. He struggled versus Auburn, but other than that, he was dominant the rest of the season. He run blocked for Myles Gaskin, pass blocked for Jake Browning, and Trey Adams was injured. He never was able to take that leap and move over to left tackle during Adams' injury, but he's more durable than him, and he did well in the Senior Bowl, so I think you're getting a great starter at right tackle on day 2 in the 3rd round. And he could be a 10-year starter. Might not be a Pro Bowler, but he can be a reliable 10-year starter. He's one of the safest offensive tackle prospects in this draft at the right tackle position, and he's a great value pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is. Our next guy is probably a prediction fourth round.
It's Florida Gators left tackle
Marquez
Ivy. He was a 5-star recruit, played left guard the first 2 seasons, and he moved to left tackle. He was actually a 5-star recruit like Hyatt in high school, and he's got experience in all 5 positions in the offensive line. So he might not even play left tackle. He could kick inside to guard or center. And he did well. He did better as a senior, but I honestly think he's going to be either a right tackle, a guard, or a center. I just don't see him as a left tackle in the NFL. If he's versatile enough to play all 5 spots, I feel like he'll either move to guard, center, or right tackle. And I list him as a tackle because he played tackle at Florida. He might actually move to another position in the NFL. If he's versatile enough to play all 5 positions on the offensive line, that's how Austin Corbett was last year. The Browns moved him to guard. So he might move to guard or center. It's possible. He's talented, but Ivy's strength and footwork does not add up to the average NFL left tackle, despite having that versatility. Has trouble getting hands on defenders, needs to get stronger, improve his footwork, gets beaten frequently on inside moves. His reaction timing, coordination needs to improve. I had a 2nd-round grade on him last year. Now I have a 4th-round grade on him. I still think he could be a decent starter, though, despite being a day 3 prospect. And his arms are short. He's probably a guard or a right tackle at best, but he's a guy you're going to need to coach and develop. Otherwise, he might end up moving inside to guard. But I do think he can be a okay, above average starter. Maybe I'm being a little lenient here, but he does have some skills on tape.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, like he's an effective pass blocker. His run blocking, zone blocking is superb. Extremely durable. I mean, I'm looking for that if I'm going to be a GM in the NFL. He is a natural stop, ball rushing, pass blocking strength, and run directions. He has right tackle potential.
Like the Raiders could draft him for insurance if they wanted an offensive lineman in the 4th round. That's a good value.
I'm talking in this.
It's your turn. Sorry.
I don't want it. For guard, it's great. It has the versatility to play all 5 spots. Okay. Now you did say that's good, but exactly his versatility and his footwork, they need definitely that hands down. I don't think the Raiders need an offensive tackle. They just got 2 of them last year, so in the draft. So if they're going to bring one in, it's probably going to be through free agency. Anyway, let's get to Isaiah Prince.
Yeah, Isaiah Prince out of Ohio State, The Ohio State University. He played right tackle, 3 years of experience, and scouts have him graded higher than this. But I like Jamarco Jones more than Prince last year. And Prince, while he did well enough to show me he's improved to the point where he's a borderline starter, he hasn't done anything to alter my perception of him. I like Jamarco Jones more than Prince, and the irony is Jamarco Jones fell to the 5th round of the draft. He didn't get a Senior Bowl invite, but he did well against Taco Charlton, who was a 1st-round pick. And Isaiah Prince didn't make that transition from right tackle to left tackle. He was supposed to move to left tackle, and he didn't. So I like him as a right tackle. He was an effective pass blocker, but I thought Michael Jordan, the center in Ohio State, was the best lineman for Dwayne Haskins this season. And Prince is an effective pass blocker, but his run blocking, his zone blocking, but he misses assignments at times. He showed this on tape versus Michigan. He missed assignments versus Rashawn Gary, and the strength wasn't there. The footwork was inconsistent. I see a lingering blocker who can hold blocks up to 4 seconds rather than a constant blocker. And he could be a 4th to 5th rounder. I mean, he could go in day 2, but I really think he's a 4th to 5th round pick when looking at the tape and reviewing everything. But he could go in day 2, I'm saying. I just don't think he'll go in the 1st round now, like some of the experts have said in the past. I think it's the process.
He's an effective run blocker, a pass blocker, excuse me. Run blocking, zone blocking is good. But he does tend to miss assignments. As you should told me about, like the Michigan tape. I mean, get up against Gary. Well, I think Gary is a little overrated actually in some of the aspects. So we'll go into that when we get into the 1st round of the draft. His pass footwork needs some work. Pass blocking, footwork. It's just very inconsistent. So I mean, when we look at somebody like this, we don't project them as high. But since offensive tackles are so much needed, through all 32 teams are going to probably get somebody and it's good just to talk about. I don't know if we have him because there's a guy that I want to talk about next. Actually, I think is better than some of the players that we've already spoke about, but you have him as number 17, but I think in my book he's number 11 and 12. And that's Dennis DeLay. And if I look at Dennis DeLay, Dennis DeLay is 6'6", 312 pounds. He does really good in pass protection. He has a very good strength, mental processing. He needs to work on his footwork as well. He didn't just go to South Carolina. He spent 2 years in junior college. Played in the SEC. Sure, he had some concerns through some bend twitches, rushes, footwork, like we're saying. But ideally, he's ready to start as a tackle or a guard in the NFL. He shut down Colin Farrell, DeAndre Walker, Josh Allen. He played very good against some of the players in the Senior Bowl, and that's what I like about him. And don't hesitate. I know you have him going, in the 5th round, but this guy is a 2nd or 3rd rounder actually in my book.
Awesome, and that's a great feedback. I do like him more than Zach Bailey, a guy who was higher on my board in the preseason than Dennis Daly, but Daly and Bailey, I gave them both 5th round grades, but I think they could both be starters. So if a team took them in the 2nd or 3rd round, I'd probably be a little bit more lenient and give him a C or a D grade instead of an F grade, because I think you could argue he's a 2nd or 3rd rounder. If you think he's a starting tackle, you can't really give a team an F grade if they take him in the 2nd or 3rd round. You can't. It's just not a good way of assessing prospects. And I really like the fact that Dennis Daly has those traits on tape. And I also like Zach Bailey. He's a guy who may end up moving to guard or center. Even though he's a tackle, he just doesn't look like a left tackle. The fact that Daly was able to come in from community college, Georgia Military College, and beat out Zach Bailey for the left tackle job says a lot about Dennis Daly and how talented he is on tape. And I think Bailey might be the better zone blocker, though, but his run blocking is awful. Zach Bailey's probably one of the worst run blockers in the class, but he's versatile enough to play anywhere on the offensive line. But I do like his pass protection more. But we'll see. Zach Bailey, him and Dennis Daly are both really talented tackles for South Carolina. Both could be starters. Let's go to another Senior Bowl guy, number 19, Chuma Edoga. He played right tackle at USC, but they lined him up at left tackle in the Senior Bowl, and he actually did well there. Like, he actually had some good practices at left tackle. So that's the only reason I think Edoga could be a borderline starter. He's a guy that could make it. High football IQ, gets to 2nd level, can take on double teams, but he gets pushed back too often. He doesn't get punching on some of his blocks. Darnold got pressured constantly at USC, and when this guy was a right tackle, he had to earn the right tackle job. He did not have experience at right tackle until Darnold left. So Edoga really worked on his game after Darnold left, and I think he's a borderline starter, but I don't think he has the ceiling of a Pro Bowler, because if he couldn't stand out when Darnold was there, that's going to affect his stock to a degree, and I've got a 5th rounder on him, but I won't be surprised if he goes in the 3rd or 4th round.
So we're talking about the SC gentleman, correct?
Yes, Chuma Edoga.
Okay. He started at USC over the past 2 years. One great season at USC, which was 2017 round. 2018, USC had that the performance of his senior year wasn't extravagant. You could say during his final season with the Trojans, he dealt with a lot of injuries, knee, hip. He caused them to miss a couple of games that they could have won in California when they played perfectly. So really, depending on how all this, moves up and all the draft process, we're going to see if he moves up or down. But I have him staying place probably in the 5th round, 6th round even. to the next one. Next one, gentlemen, is Trayvon Tate out of Memphis. This is a guy that some people may like, 6'4". He's really needs to put on a lot of weight. He's 295. He's actually one of the smaller offensive tackles in this draft class.
But he looks like he's 330. He's 295, but he looks like he's 330. But he's very slim, and he's going to need to put on weight. So he's going to really need to hit the weight room. And he maintains blocks for 5 to 7 seconds. Good but not great run blocking strength. Did a fantastic job opening up lanes for Darrell Henderson. And I feel like his pass blocking can be okay, but it's very inconsistent. He accidentally powerbombed his own quarterback in one game, on one play versus Central Florida. So, I mean, while I think he's got the ability to be a borderline starter, he's really raw, and he might not get. He could end up going undrafted just if he's smaller than 295 at the combine. If we find out he dropped weight at the combine, he might actually go undrafted. That's the scary thing. But he's got the talent to be a nice late round pick.
Yeah, to me, he's really. I don't really have him listed as a high talent like you do. Here.
I have 85 is a borderline grade for me. Anything above 85 could be decent starter, and anything below 85 for me is a backup. So I think he's a borderline starter, but he might be a backup in the NFL.
Let's bring what you brought in your little thing about him. Very effective pass blocker. He does well in run blocking and zone blocking. He's extremely durable. Durability is not an issue for him.
Like, I've seen plays where he's maintained blocks for 5 to 7 seconds, but I've also seen plays where he misses assignments and causes QB to get power bombed. So I've seen both good and bad with Tate. So carry on, Oren.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like you're saying, tremendous. He needs to work on his footwork, basically, where he's getting beat. Like you said, against Central Florida here, he's lost himself, basically. So that's Trayvon Tate. Let's move to the
guy from Pittsburgh, Alex Buchser.
Yeah, Alex Buchser.
This is a guy that I think could be a steal in day 3 of the draft because he's 6'6", 315. He can play right tackle, right guard, or center. And he was easily the best offensive lineman on the Pitt Panthers after Brian O'Neill left. He's an excellent run blocker. He allowed Quadri Olson and Darren Hall to both have dominant seasons on the ground. Pitt has 2 draftable running backs, and he really dominated as a run blocker this year. He cut blocks and pull blocks effectively as well. He knows how to shuffle his feet, his pass blocking footwork. He's got the upside to be excellent in pass protection. And he played left tackle and defensive tackle at Mount Lebanon High School, which is where I almost moved to, by the way. I ended up going to another school, but we got a report to get through. So we're just going to talk about how he's the only offensive tackle in this class to have blocked a field goal in high school. So he could play on special teams. And I think that when I look at how he did, because I live in PA, I live on the East Coast, so if this guy stood out when he was younger and he continued to stand out in college, he could be one of the hidden draft gems of this offensive tackle class where you could put him on special teams if you don't think he's a starter. He's the only tackle in this class that you can really say that about. Because if he has previous experience on special teams, you can put him there if you don't think he's a starter. And I think that makes Alex Buchser draftable, in my opinion, even if he isn't a guy that's on a lot of teams' radars at the moment. He lacks the pass blocking strength to be a Pro Bowl right tackle, but he, on some plays versus Penn State, because I did the Penn State-Pitt film cut, he could barely maintain a block for a second. And on other plays, he maintained the block for up to 7 seconds. That inconsistency can be corrected, but it's a weakness at this point. His zone blocking is terrible. I'm not sure where he goes, but I have a 5th round grade on him.
I don't want to speed you up, but we only have. I want to talk about other things here, so let's try to get through the 8 rather quickly. And
Oren, we're going to get through the guys that are projected starters, and then we're going to rush through the final 8, and then get to what are other topics, Oren. Okay, that's why I'm playing this. But what are your thoughts on Buchser, real quickly?
Say what?
How do you feel about Alex Buchser?
Alex Buchser is played left tackle but you remember
he moved to right tackle when he was in college, but he only played left tackle at the high school level. He moved to right tackle once he got to Pitt. So I don't think he projects to left tackle in the NFL. But that versatility helps his resume. That's what I'm saying.
You know, he cuts blocks and pulls blocks effectively well, great bend, and he shuffles his feet well. That's pretty much all I have to say about Alex Brookster.
All right, so we'll go to the next tackle. Ethan Greenidge was my Shrine Game sleeper, 6'5", 335, four-year starter at Villanova. He helped Villanova beat Temple. He has everything you want on tape, and there were plays in the Temple game where Ethan Greenidge was maintaining blocks for 7 to 10 seconds like Orlando Brown. He was pushing Temple's edge rushers back 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. There were plays where Ethan Greenidge was making first-round plays, but there were also plays where Ethan Greenidge was making plays that an undrafted prospect would make by missing a lot of assignments. And he led the FCS with 126 pancake blocks. He has the massive, biggest wingspan of any FCS prospect, and he did well at the East-West Shrine Game. So for that reason, I have a borderline starter grade on Ethan Greenidge, but he's very raw. He might not even get drafted this year, but I do love how he's played. I love the way he makes something happen on a few plays, and he just has that edge, that dog in him, that instinct that you need to have if you're going to make it at the next level. Greenidge has that, and I think he's one of the more underrated gems in this class. I think he's a hidden draft gem for the 2019 NFL draft because but he has to maintain. He might have, like, in the fourth quarter of the Temple game, he was missing assignments, but early in the game, he was dominating. Like, so we'll see. Maybe he's a swing tackle or something, but I really liked his tape, and I just wanted to give Ethan Greenidge an honorable mention, and then we'll quickly read through the names of the rest of the players that made the list, and then we'll get to some other topics so we can both prepare for the Super Bowl. But, yeah, he's from Flanders, New York, and his football IQ does need to improve. Anything you want to say about Greenidge before we get to before I read through the remaining tackles and the rankings and get to your mock?
I think you should how about just read some of them as they pop up, because it's like when you get to these late draft picks, basically, I'm not even going to remember.
Yeah, it's like the first 5 rounds, there's only 5 rounds worth of starting tackles, so we're going to get to the 6th and 7th round guys. Number 23, Wyatt Miller, 2-year starter at left tackle, 84 potential grade. Titus Howard, he was at the Senior Bowl, right tackle. He did have the biggest hands in the Senior Bowl, so that Titus Howard's a guy who might go earlier than the 6th round. I mean, that's a notable name. Paul Adams out of Missouri. He was the right tackle for Drew Lock at Missouri. And a lot of my friends really like him to the point where he's a 2nd to 3rd round grade. 26, Trey Pipkins. I have a 7th round grade on him. I know you were thinking about putting him in the 2nd round. He is a very good run blocker. He led the FCS in rushing yards. Sioux Falls led the FCS in rushing yards. They also led Division II in rushing yards, and he led Division II with 115 pancake blocks. So Trey Pipkins is one of these Division II guys that could get drafted. You could argue he's safer than Ethan Greenidge, too. I don't think he's got the ceiling Greenidge has, but I think you could argue Pipkins is safer. And then 27, Patrick McCarry. My friend Thomas Coburn showed me his tape. I liked him in pass protection. He's 6'4", 310. He can play tackle or guard on both sides. His run blocking's awful, though. So I gave him at 27. Jackson Barton, 6'7", 310 pounds. Played offensive tackle on either side. Just got absolutely manhandled by Sutton Smith. He was the right tackle to Garrett Bowles at Utah, and then he moved to left tackle. But he got manhandled. I have a 7th round grade on him. And then the final 2 tackles on the list, Ryan Bates at Penn State. He's got the ability to play left tackle, left guard, right tackle, right guard. He was also a run blocker for Saquon Barkley. So Ryan Bates is someone who could go ahead of the 7th round. I'll admit that. I know Oren would probably admit that too. And then the final tackle on the rankings is BYU offensive tackle Ulu Lapuaho. He injured both of his knees. He has 11 siblings, and he wants to provide support for his siblings. And he's got an intriguing story. His freshman year, he punched a Boise State player, but he's overcame that. He stayed healthy. He's made good choices this year. So Lapuaho might not get drafted, but I thought his story and his personality was really fascinating, so I gave him an honorable mention, and that's our offensive tackle rankings, Oren. We did a good job with that. So.
All right. Thank you so much, because, last gentleman also, he had UCL for. So we'll see where all these guys end up. It's very great to have 30 guys to pick from. Some of them will probably be undrafted. Some of them will be in the top 20.
All right. Thank you for listening to our Google Hangout. If you want to listen to Oren's mock draft and the rest of our podcast, head over to TalkShoe and listen in the chat room. And feel free to leave some comments on our Facebook page or on Twitter. If you've got fan questions, you can email me at chris@draftytopia.com, and I'll get to those in your free time. But that's our offensive tackle rankings. We'll be back with the guard rankings after the Super Bowl, as Joey and I will resume our normal positional rankings. But Oren filled in. He did a fantastic job, and now we're going to his mock draft only on TalkShoe.